Hello everyone, I'm Paula, and my topic is Gorwaa Adjectives. My content, so I will talk about methodology and the data collection I did, and then a bunch of things about adjective agreement patterns. In the end, I also did coordinated noun phrases with different genders, but just very briefly, and I have a conclusion in my references. So I start with methodology and data collection. From Andrew, I got a list of 60 adjectives that were written in Gorwaa and had an English translation. And from that, I then always prepared for the elicitation sentences in English and asked for a translation in Gorwaa. And I was able to get 29 or to work with 29 adjectives in total. And I used 4 methods. I started with the translation I already said. I asked, for example, here, I see the tiny boy, and then Hezekiah would give me Garma nikikil ukao. And I realized after my first elicitation that he sometimes gave me synonyms of the words that I was looking for. So I did also back translations, where I just asked or I read out the Gorwaa sentence and asked for the English translation. Here, he gave me Garma Shaqani Naugao when I was looking for Shaqatak, and I wasn't sure if it's the same word or if it's different. And I was meaning to get not the word small, but that's what he gave me. I wanted to have thin. Well, the next method I did was like questions about previous elicited material. So with the word yarir, for example, in the list I had, it was translated as large, and I asked for, I see the large boys, and he did not give me the word yarir, he gave me yangarir, but I will talk about that later. So the second time I asked first, what I have the word yangarir, and what does it mean? And then he told me it means many, so it makes sense that he did not use it for the first sentence that I asked him. And I just put it into English in the sentence, I see the many boys, or I see many boys, and then he gave me the answer with yarir ugaw. And the last method I used was judgment via translation. Again, in a previous elicitation, I prepared the sentences with the word shakwaho, which means fat. But for the neuter nouns, or the adjectives that agree with the neuter nouns, he gave me takaho and takaha and not shakwaho. So I just created the Gorwaa sentence and asked, can I say haiso shakwaho igao? Is it also possible, or do I have to say takaho? He said it means the same thing, and also repeated. I asked him to repeat the sentence as well to really see if he would use it or not. And generally, I used Elon, the Elon program, for transcribing, and also the Fieldwork Language Explorer Flex was used for parsing and glossing, though I did not do that too much due to time reasons. In total, I was able to do 5 elicitations, and these are all the audios that I used for all of my examples that I will give here. Now we come to the patterns, but before I start with the patterns that I found, I had some adjectives or words that are adjectives in English that turned out to be verbs or nouns in Gorwaa or treated as such, which were 5 adjectives in total that turned out to be a verb with iat'er, amokwar, diki, iat'in, und kusul. Iat'in, I originally did not ask for that word. I asked for wahad, the Iraq word. He did not want to use it and gave me that instead. And with kusul, it was similar. I gave him the word gurham. I was looking for gurham, but he did not want to use it, so he gave me kusul. And the one word that he used as a noun was amasoja, yellow, and I'm just gonna show you the examples real quick. Here an example with a verb. I have to say I have no idea what is going on with the verbs. It was just not what I was looking into, so I did not mind that much. But you can see that for me there's no distinct pattern. And this is the example for the noun that is used. It does not change no matter the adjective does not change no matter the noun in gender or number. And now I come to the actual pattern I want to talk about. First of all, when it comes to tonal pattern, I found it in every adjective that I was looking into, that basically every time when the adjective agrees with a masculine noun, no matter the number, there's a high tone at the end of the vowel, or the vowel in the end of the adjective. And when, as you can see here, and when there is when the adjective agrees with the female noun, no matter the number, there's a low tone that I did not write in here because just how the writing system works. If you have a low tone, you don't really write it down because you always expect it to be a low tone unless it's high. Kind of, that's why I marked the high tones, but not the low tones. And in agreement with the neuter nouns here as well, there's a low tone, there's no high tone. That was the pattern that I found here. The first pattern I want to talk about now is relevant in terms of number. So the plural adjectives here would have the suffix en, and I found 8 of them. That was the pattern that occurred the most, with da'at, kansar, awit, sagakawit, amwash, kukumar, and tuhmar, and mikakil. I wanted to give 2 examples. I prepared 2 examples for each pattern, but I will skip one of those due to time reasons. So here I will skip that and come right to the example 5 with duhmar. So we have the high tone with the masculine nouns garman daqi, and in the plural with boys, I see the very courageous boys is daqi duhmaren ugao. So there's the en at the end. It's not just a suffix that is added. Sometimes the double vowel at the end of the verb also shortens, but sometimes it also does other things. And here I want to say that with the example with boys, with daqi, Hezekiah gave me 2 options I could use, and I decided to use en because you will see just in a bit. But the first translation he gave me was daqi duhmar ugao, with, and in singular it's duhmar, so there was no double vowel and no en. But after that he said, oh, you can also say it in the way that I've written down here with duhmaren, and I put it here because in agreement with a female noun and in agreement also with the neuter noun, there's the en at the end. So I think, I'm not sure why it only happened there, because here the other plural, he did not give me the option of shortening the double vowel. It was just with boys. The second pattern I found was that in the plural also the double vowel at the end of the adjective is shortened, similar to what happened with dehmar. And here we can see, I will also just give one example, garma anku awaku ugo, and in the plural it's dank awaku. So it's just faster the double vowel disappears. We still have the tonal. With the feminine nouns or the agreement, there's the low tone, and still in the plural, there's just one vowel at the end, and the same goes with the neuter as well. This one I will skip. Then the third pattern that I found was that the double vowel at the end of the adjective is shortened and a glottal stop is added in the plural. And this happened only 3 times. With all of the 29 adjectives I looked at, with shaqwaho, hoho, and boh. The example I will give here is with hoho. You have in the singular garma hoho ugao, and in the plural dare hoho ugao. And this pattern is again with the agreement with the female nouns, but with a low tone in the end, and also with the neuter ones. This is the second example. I will also just quickly skip. And then this one, I will talk about a bit more because that was a bit more interesting for me, that I found adjectives that kind of have a pattern or something is happening, but it's not reoccurring. And it happened with 5 adjectives with aankuts, yarir, ho, yari, yangarir, and afaho. And the first one I will talk about is with aankuts, with naked. So here we have what it's called a reduplicative plural with the susu, in agreement with the plural noun. And it appeared with the masculine plural noun and as well with the female plural noun with amina aankutsu, but not with the neuter. And it was even stranger that there's not even any difference between the singular and plural here, because usually you always have a difference. And I think that's very interesting, and I would have to look into even, I would like to look into it more, but I did not have the time for this. But I think it's very interesting. The second with yangarir. And here I have to give a disclaimer with the nouns. It wasn't my first elicitation, and I knew that dog in singular was a masculine noun, and I expected it also being a masculine noun in the plural, which was proven wrong. It's female. So this example is not the best because I don't have the plural for every gender, but I think I still wanted to include it here because it does something very strange, that we have here in the singular and in the plural actually 2 different adjectives. Dieren was a word that was also in the list I was given at the beginning, but as a different word. So it meant big, in Yangarir meant large. And here I basically found out that you would use Yangarir with singular, in the agreement with singular nouns, and dieren with plural nouns. And this pattern also good with the female nouns, that we have yangarir in the singular and dieren in the neuter. Here as well, the neuter ones. I think it's very, I don't know why, and I have to say that I did ask Hezekiah if I can say, for example, here, Haisusu yangarir, so I see the large tails in the plural, if I can use yangarir, and he said no, but I unfortunately did not ask if I could use diren in the singular, so I would definitely go back and do that again to prove that maybe it is or is not possible to use diren as well in the singular and only in the plural. The next one is ho, which means good and tasty. It has 2 meanings, and when I tried to or when I created the English sentences, I decided I just want to go with good. And first I thought it might have the third pattern I talked about before, and here it also looks like it in the agreement with the female and also with the masculine, but in the neuter it does something weird, especially in the plural. It's, you would expect it to be haisema her, but it's her, and that was very strange. And something I did not write down here is that I asked in Gorwaa if I could also say haisema her igao and what it means, and then Hezekiah told me that that actually changed the meaning of the adjective to tasty. So for some reason in the plural, it is the meanings for her is like, I'm not sure how to say this so everyone understands, but it's kind of split. You can't say anymore that ho means good or tasty, but in the plural with the neuter noun, in agreement with a neuter noun, it only means tasty, and if you want to say good, you would have to use a different adjective. And with yarir, it was in the list as large in the adjective list I got at the beginning, and it Hezekiah did not give me that word when I asked for large. And that's why I ask again, what does yarir actually mean? And then he told me it means many, which then makes sense that he did not give me that. So the word is only used for the plural. I tried to ask him if in some way you could also say garma yarir, but he said that's not possible, but you could say ur, but then it changes the meaning to big. So yarir is just a word that is used in plural, but with the English translation, that's also very clear and makes sense. And the last one is afaho, which means smooth talking. And here it's not only that the double vowel at the end and the is shortened and the glottal stop appears, but the second A in the word also turns into an I for some reason. Um, I found out that afa means ear and afi, afa is mouth and afi is ear.
Afi is mouths.
Oh, okay, now it makes sense.
Whoa.
Okay, so I did a mistake here.
Okay, didn't make
So-
a mistake. This is
So afa means mouth and afi mouth, so then it makes sense why it changes here as well. But I think it's just it's like a new kind of pattern that appeared. You can see it in the agreement with the masculine now and also with the feminine ones, just with the low tone, but the afa, ho, and afi ho stays. Here I did not have an example for singular just because the only word I had for a singular noun is tail, and I can't really say smooth talking tail. That's why I could not try to prove this theory here. The last thing that I did, what I think would be interesting, is what happens if I put two nouns that are a different gender in one sentence. Because in English, we can say that I see the beautiful boy and woman, and we assume that both are beautiful. But I found out that in Gorwaa, that is not the case, that the adjective always has to follow the noun, even if there are two or more nouns, or well, two here. So you would have to say garma ho ne ameni garma ho ho ne ameni ho ho igao. And I tried out to change the placement of the nouns. So first I see the beautiful boy and woman, and then I said I see the beautiful woman and boy. For one, I did it with two adjectives, but for one adjective I had 12 sentences that I asked. I will not show you all of them. I think that would be too much. So I try to change the placement of the nouns. What I also try to do is, if there's a difference, if the noun is in singular or plural, first I assumed there would be no difference, because if it would be possible to say it like we do it in English, I see the beautiful boy and tail would be plural because it's two things. But because the adjective always has to follow the noun, um, there's a difference in how you would say it with a plural or a singular noun here. And the last thing I thought was very interesting is when I say I see the beautiful woman in tail, because the agreement with a female singular noun and a neuter singular noun is the same here for this word. I chose hoho because it has a very clear pattern here. So you would say amini hoho ne haiso hoho igao, and there's no difference in how you would pronounce or write hoho in both cases. So I thought maybe you can even just use one and say amini ne haiso hoho igao, but that would change the meaning to I see the woman and the beautiful tail. So you really always need the adjective following the noun. And my conclusion here is that the data shows a tonal pattern that we can see throughout all the adjectives, and that there are three reoccurring patterns when it comes to number. The first pattern was that in the plural there's the en at the end of the word. The second pattern is that regardless of the gender, the double vowel of the adjective in singular in agreement with the plural noun are shortened to one vowel. And some adjective, though, here I have to give a disclaimer, I did not say it before I wanted to, but I kind of skipped over it. that there was a word, yatir, with EER. And if I put that in the plural, it does not turn to yatir, but it. So there's a T at the end. And maybe even that is a fourth pattern that appeared that I did not recognize until now. And the third pattern was that the double vowel in the plural adjective is shortened and the glottal stop is added at the end. And also what I want to mention here is that even though there are words that there are adjectives in Gorwaa, not all adjectives that we have in English also are able to translate into an adjective into Gorwaa. So some adjectives in English, or the words that we think are adjectives, are actually verbs or nouns in Gorwaa. And there are some adjectives in Gorwaa that for now I said that they have like their own little pattern. But if we continue this and do it with more adjectives, I'm sure that some of these patterns maybe also come up and we found more that are reoccurring and not just ones. And these are my references. It's not much. I just used some for translating some words and to make sure that I'm writing them right in the presentation. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Paula. You get a thumbs up from Martin. Paula, I'm interested, and I asked this yesterday. If you had another half an hour with Hezekiah, how would you go about using that time? What would be the questions that you asked him?
There are two things I definitely want to clarify. One is with the words yangarir and diren, because as I said, I did check if yangarir is possible also in the plural, but I did not check if diren might also be possible with singular nouns. So that would be something I definitely want to look at again. And genuinely the adjectives that had this kind of weird pattern that were
those one-offs.
These one-offs I think are very interesting. I would want to find out why. I don't think I could, but
I think
it would be interesting. And maybe also do more of those specifically adjectives and put them like two nouns in one sentence, as I did in the last example, and see if they do something else, because generally they do something else on their own. So maybe even when they put together, they also do something very completely different.
Yeah. Great idea. Martin, you have your hand up.
Yes, sorry, I'm taking up all the discussions, but I'm impressed by this elicitation. I mean, the course worked. I mean, this is excellent elicitation. So congratulations also to Andrew. And the first, it's a pity that Melle has left, because what Melle found out for Irako, and it's probably the same for Gorwaa, is that adjectives, two things, that adjectives, that it is not agreement in number, it is expression, it's not agreement. And the second thing related to that, it's not number, but it is distributivity. So with your thing like Diren, he found sentences, and that is really trying to get the impossible out of the informant. But Hezekiah is even worse than Basilisa. He's too imaginative. It's a challenge for you. He's giving you problems. But you would be able to say river Diren. But Diren, I think, is always what you call the plural, or what I would now call the distributive form, and it is suppletive. It's not strictly speaking in the strict definition of the term suppletive. It's not suppletive but it is restricted to only the distributive, to the plural situation. But you could use it with a singular one, I think, if you really get Hezekiah to cooperate for head nouns, where you can imagine that something is the quality of the adjective at some point, but not at others. So like the river wide. We had a river white distributive. If you have a white without distributive, with the singular white, it means the river is white. If you have it with distributive, it means it's white at places. So this is the example that shows that the so-called plural forms on the adjectives are not agreement and that they're expressive, and it is not simply number but distributivity. So that will be, I think, exciting work to continue in Gorwaa and not and he is doing with the Afa and Afi, beautiful, but he is making all sorts of compounds that are completely new to me with the noun plus the adjective, and he's really enriching. Or maybe Gorwaa is very different from Iraku, otherwise he's enriching the Gorwaa language. I sort of think that he's that kind of guy.
I think sometimes we get new forms with Hezekiah, but I think for some of these, I think this, just asking other people, some people will come up with very similar forms. Now their semantics are sometimes a little bit more unclear, but these compound noun adjective constructions, like they're out there, people use them. I always have to say this whenever I see a compound noun adjective thing going on. I find this fascinating because if it's a compound, normally,
Yeah,
that afa, that mouth,
should stay the
stays
same.
singular. It shouldn't turn to plural when the head. So if you're talking about boys, that mouth, if it's actually a compound, it shouldn't be accessible to change number if boy changes number. So you would expect cross-linguistically that you would get boys, mouth, long, and then the long would agree with the boys. What happens is you get the mouths changes. But what's even cooler about this is the adjective does not agree with mouths. It agrees with boys. So for some reason, that noun is active for number. It will switch. But the adjective, but it's not active for agreement on the adjective. So somehow it's like semi-active. Yeah. And this is very, very strange.
Absolutely.
Anyways, I always have to say this whenever I get the noun and adjective. Has Mela ever written anything on this, Martin?
We are writing on number expression in Iraku, and this distributivity will be part of it.
Get that out.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Stephen.
So I have another question, but first, is the disparity in the way then between the behavior of mouth and the good, or ho or whatever it was, is that then explained by what Martin was saying about the number marking on the adjective not actually being number marking but being distributivity, whereas like maybe the noun is agreeing with the boy because there's more than one boy, so there's necessarily more than one mouth. And the length, or the whatever it was, is distributive rather than plural, but it's just you've got kind of like they overlap, right, in kind of the logical use of those.
Stephen, that might be a nice way out of this problem. I would, you could look at that. Oh, brilliant. That's very cool. Martin, this is really exciting. Great.
And then my actual question was, I was just wondering whether, given that in the situations where you have two nouns and you want to scope one adjective over both of them and you have to repeat it, I was wondering just very tangentially related, did you look at things where you're trying to ascribe two adjectives to one noun? And do you need a conjunction, or can you do, like in English, you can say like the long, deep river, but in some languages you can't. You have to say like the long and the deep river or something like that.
Unfortunately, I did not look into this. I also only, I don't know how many minutes. I think I only spent like 15 minutes on like two adjectives where I just decided to do in the last elicitation, because I thought, it would be interesting to also look into something else, because I thought something exciting will happen, but it was actually very easy, kind of. It did not turn out how I hoped it would.
This is 95% of linguistic elicitation, right? My colleague Hannah Gibson would always say, is the data going to play ball? But sometimes it doesn't. But of course, put this on your list.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting. I think that would be something.
You might also be able to get some interesting distinction. So again, going back to Martin's example about the river, like if you're talking about a river which is, yeah, like he says, wide at points but not others, but it's always deep or always long, you might be able to get the plural and singular form modifying the same noun at the same time, which really, I think, yeah, should show you that it is actually distributive, like you say, Martin.
Yeah, to answer your question about two adjectives to one noun, you have to have a second representation of that noun in the pronominal.
Ah, okay, all right.
Like an ar or an o.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to fill it in. Do we have any other questions, or can Paula finally relax after this course?
No, she should write an article on these compound adjectives.
There you go. There you go. You heard it. Yeah, and what Gorwaa can do versus other languages. Well, thank you very much, Paula. And we'll give you another round of applause.